Hi, everybody. Okay, now this is a real brain game. We're about to jump into a conversation that I'm so looking forward. Someone that I've wondered about. It's a major sponsor of the Global Wellness Institute and the Summit. We're talking to the CEO of Fountain Life. Fountain Life is an emerging longevity-focused clinic. They're clinics that leverage new technology and health data to help members slow down aging. They do a whole lot of other things. We're going to talk about their founding. But what I want to tell everybody is I'm so excited because I'm joined today with a co-host, and that's Alexia Brue, the co-founder of Well+Good. We call it Well and Good. She was the CEO until it was acquired in 2018. And think about this. She and her partner, Melise Galula, launched Well and Good without any outside capital and grew it from an idea to a digital media and events company that employed 70 people. We, as PR people, always wanted to be covered in Well and Good, and it still exists. But here is Alexia, who is a fan of Fountain Life and has been to the headquarters, right?
I visited their White Plains facility because I'm fascinated with the longevity space and was so excited when Fountain Life launched and read Tony Robbins' book, which we'll discuss. So when I got to meet Phil here at the summit, it was a kind of fangirl moment, and I had lunch with him yesterday. So excited to join you.
We're so glad to have you. But let's start with Bill's origin story. I was fascinated to read, Bill, that you were a flight surgeon in the airlines or for the airline reserves, and you also became an orthopedic surgeon, right? How did you go from orthopedic surgeon to serial entrepreneur to help build 9 different hospitals? How did that happen?
Right. So, well, I appreciate that. Well, thank you for having me today. So, as an orthopedic, I was interested in science from early on and aviation. And so I've been flying for over 30 or 40 years. When I finished in orthopedic training and I went out into private practice after having some research background as well, and I was doing sports medicine, I was very interested in that. It became pretty clear early on that the system needed some adjustments and prices were too high, and I knew that. And so being very classically trained, having gone through, did all the right things, honors grad and all of that, and going to really a great training program at Baylor in Houston. Starting into private practice, I've quickly started trying to figure out how do we lower costs and improve quality. And I did that for a number of years. And then it became very clear that, the practice side of it was interesting, but that most of the cost was actually on the hospital side, as well as on the surgery side. And I couldn't quite figure out the math because they were telling me what they were charging for procedures, and I was adding up what I was doing and trying to calculate on the back of a napkin the math behind OR time and all this, and it was a fraction of what the charges were. And I couldn't quite figure it out, and so and we needed a critical care / surgical facilities in some of the markets we were in. So wanted to learn the hospital business. So we actually, after building a couple surgery centers and imaging centers, we built a hospital, and then we built into 9 critical care hospitals which had surgical components, which part of it was how to deliver critical care better, lower costs, better outcomes, and then how do we do surgery in some of those facilities, particularly orthopedic surgery, at lower costs with better outcomes. And I was pretty happy. I thought, things were rocking along. We were making a pretty big impact in a more limited way. Certainly I built the company all from my own capital reserves and my own risk. So I didn't have any outside backers. So
you two have a lot in common.
This is a much bigger endeavor.
So it was a very early stage, and I really didn't understand about raising capital and all that. So I just did it on my own. I just assumed that would probably be the easiest way to get there. It takes a lot longer. You don't grow as fast, but at least we were able to maintain what I felt at the time was product integrity. But it was about 6 or 7 years ago, I was at a conference. I went to a conference for the very first time with one of the members who is currently on our advisory board, Dr. Daniel Kraft. Mm-hmm. And Daniel does a lot of work with exponential medicine. At the time, the conference was called Future Med. Oh. And it was a outshoot of what Peter Diamandis, who's one of our co-founders and our executive chairman, he and Daniel had come out of a TED Talk one day, and they were sitting there talking, and they said, we should do something specifically for medicine that emphasizes all the latest advances that are coming, because literally in the last 8 to 10 years, we've seen more advances in healthcare than we've seen literally in the last 100. And so what is happening is the pace of which this technology, an exponential technology, is exponentially growing, and there's no showcase for it. And the medical system is very slow to adapt. So I'd gone to this conference, and I saw for the first time something I'd never seen before, having been very traditionally trained in what I would call sick care, which is what we do today. We really don't do healthcare. We do sick care. We do break-fix medicine. And I saw for the first time what was coming. At the time, it was genomic sequencing was really still expensive. Peter was standing up on stage saying, well, within 10 years, it'll be less than $1,000. Seemed a little bit far-fetched to me at the time, being a very classically trained physician. And then I also saw all the other technology, all the imaging technologies that were coming, all of the technologies that were going to impact your health. And yet there was really no venue to be able to, A, test them or get them out to the public. And there was no payment mechanism for it either. So I sat on the back row for the first 2 years, skeptical, and I think reasonably skeptical. And in the third year after attending the conference, I actually went back to Naples, Florida, where I was living, and I built my most recent hospital. And I said, we need to start something, because I had seen a talk that Ken Dykewald gave.
I love him.
And he was talking about the explosion in aging populations.
Yep.
And how we can't really afford what we currently have, and we won't be able to afford the future. And so it became very clear that we had to come up with a better solution for longevity that didn't involve warehousing you in a skilled nursing home or assisted living or memory care. And that's the model today. We manage your decline. So came back to Naples, and we started the Longevity Performance Center. And it was using advanced technologies to detect disease at early stages, disease reversal technologies, and then optimization technologies. So how do we optimize every aspect of your health? And so as we started down that road, I had been in business about 2 years.
Was this on your own at this point, or was this with
strictly
Daniel?
on my own?
Okay.
It was strictly on my own. And I came back to Naples, and after we opened the business, we were open about 2 years, and Tony and Peter heard kind of what we were doing, and they had a stem cell company they were working on called Fountain Therapeutics. And they came over to Naples about 3.5 years ago and toured, saw what we were doing, and Tony and Peter said, we need to do something bigger, and we'll bring some capital, and let's see what we can do. Because it's very apparent, and it's the same talk I've been giving for 3.5 years, but we spend 20% of GDP on healthcare. It's $4.5 trillion. We have some of the worst outcomes in the world. The closest country to us is Germany at 11% of GDP. And if you look at what the Medicare actuaries are projecting for the future, out about 2050 and beyond, the healthcare bill looks like well over $100 trillion a year.
Jeez.
If we don't change the system.
Yeah.
And just my last thing about him being a pilot is, or a surgical Air Force surgeon, right, is that the airline industry metaphor that you always use certainly applies. If we wait till a part of the plane breaks, that would be catastrophic before you fix it. It's prevention in the airline industry. Why can't it be that way in the medical, right?
Absolutely true. And so, I've been a jet pilot for a number of years, and having been in the Air Force as a flight surgeon, checklists are one thing, but it's the preventive maintenance and the protocols that are more important. And so if you think about in the 1960s, almost jet aircraft were going down right and left, because it was new. We didn't understand metal fatigue. We didn't understand sensor technologies. We didn't have the technology. So what we started realizing is, parts break over a period of time. So let's replace the part before it breaks. And let's start to look at sensor technology. So today, you get in a jet and you don't think anything about getting on a plane here in Miami and flying halfway across the world. And you don't think for a moment about the safety of the airplane. But more importantly, what you don't realize is the pilot who sits up front doesn't really touch the controls the entire flight. He monitors the systems because the systems are actually too complicated for a pilot to understand every single electronic circuit that's currently being activated in the airplane. But the autopilot does the work. And it turns out you're not allowed to fly the airplane without the autopilot. It's illegal. So your pilot, while in the days gone past would hand fly the airplane, today he relies on technology. But what he also does, or she, more frequently today, they look at the sensors in the aircraft while you're on the ground. They pre-flight the aircraft. They know what the sensor technology looks like. They know what the turbine temperatures are. And before you get to the end of the runway to take off, all the systems are checked so that you don't have a problem at 40,000 feet.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in healthcare, we wait until you become symptomatic and then we intervene.
Well, we'll get into all the way of that unpack that analogy for Fountain Life in just a second. But I love that the origin story of this is actually at a conference, not unlike Global Wellness Summit, right? So many ideas and connections come from gatherings like this. And it sounds like you essentially, in Naples, built the prototype for Fountain Life.
Correct.
So walk us through what happened next. And I guess this was a venture that you did need to raise money for. What was and is the elevator pitch? Because you're doing so much. So I want to help people, our listeners, understand at a really high level, what is Fountain Life?
So at our core, our mission, our worldwide mission, is to fundamentally change healthcare from reactive to proactive, okay? And by doing that, meaning we know that 80% of what we treat today is chronic disease. And it turns out that almost all chronic disease does not become symptomatic until it's late stage, okay? So our goal is to detect pre-symptomatic disease at its earliest stages and give you the tools to reverse it or treat it at such an early stage that the costs are relatively minuscule. One of the reasons that we decided to scale Fountain, and we've just started that, we were about 3 years old right now, is because it turns out that from our data for the first 1,000 people we looked at, that by catching disease when we catch it, while you're still asymptomatic, but it's early, versus when it's normally found by the current health system under current screening guidelines, the cost differential lowers the healthcare costs by 70 to 80%.
And here's a few other numbers I found you have. 70% of the people who have a heart attack today never have a symptom prior to it. 70% of people who die of cancer die from a cancer that's currently not able to be screened for. And 40 to 50% of the people you've surveyed are pre-diabetic, but they don't know it.
That's correct.
Yeah. So it might be helpful to talk us through the patient journey when someone comes to Fountain Life. What are all of the ways that they can engage with it? Because you're offering so much, and so I want people to wrap their heads around the breadth of what you have.
Sure. So I should say the reason we are primarily our mission is not to just serve the 1%. Our ultimate goal is to democratize access to all of this technology through alternative delivery mechanism, essentially, because we don't really believe we're going to be able to go through the health system because the incentives are misaligned in the current health system. And doctors and hospitals aren't paid to keep you healthy. Yep. And that's the reality of the payment system, and hopefully we'll get some change over that over time. But most of our clients, it's when they come to our centers essentially destination facilities. People come from all over the world to have the evaluations done. And under one roof, we do all of the evaluation that can quantify your health, collecting over 150 gigabytes of data. It's a combination between spa and hospitality and advanced medical. So you really don't feel like you're in a clinic, okay? We don't have doctors in white jackets and stethoscopes and traditional 200-year-old tools, which is really what we've done over the last 200 years for prevention. But what you will do is our care team will engage you, usually call the call center, and you can engage with the care team. Our healthcare coordinators and program advisors will educate you on what we do, the differing offerings, and we can get into that. And then once you're into the center, you're passed off to the care team. Care team consents you, gets all of your, gives you all the recommendations and where you need to come. When you come to a Fountain Life Center, it's generally about a half a day experience. And it's, when you come to the center, first thing we do is we put you in a suite. We give you very comfortable clothes to be there for the remainder of the day. That suite is your home for the entire visit where you're there. Everybody comes to you. You don't go, milling around the facility or looking for different things. But more importantly, we draw your blood, and then we quickly feed you a nutritious meal because everybody's fasting. And we draw a lot of blood panels, advanced blood biomarkers. And then we move from there to doing the analysis. So advanced cardiac scans using AI overlays to look for cardiac plaque in your vessels, looking for everything from, and then we do a full body and brain MRI with AI overlays. We do DEXA scans, we do IV therapies. There's a whole litany of things we do. We will draw your blood for genomic screening. We'll do microbiome analysis.
Wow.
We'll draw blood also looking at your physiologic age. We will do strength measurements. We will test you also for mitochondrial function and toxicology, because there's a lot of toxins in the environment, and it's a whole list of what we call the APEX program, which is our most popular program. And then once all that data is there, we quickly will get back to you, make sure that you don't have something major. For instance, we'll tell you what your heart looks like, and if you have a critical condition, we'll make sure you get taken care of immediately. Quite frankly, of all the people that walk through the doors, 2% of people have cancer. About 2.5% of people have aneurysms. About 20% have heart disease and don't know it.
Wow.
About 17% have elevated liver fat, and we probably have about 14% of people we find that have a relatively acute finding that needs to be addressed.
Let me ask you, what do you do for their emotional support? Because I personally, Susie Ellis told me early on that, we could go get an MRI and get everything. I'm like, I'm afraid. I don't want to know what's wrong with me. How do you address?
Well, so first of all, we explain to everybody, these are problems you want to know early, not late. Meaning every single problem we can detect, when we detect it early, has a corrective cure. And importance is, the bigger the problem becomes, the harder it becomes to cure. So with cancer, your survival rate goes way up when we catch it early. I mean, into the 90 percentile range, okay? It may be just a simple surgery to remove the tumor, right? I just had a friend of mine went through and, we found it's second year he's been going through every year. Last year he didn't have anything on his lung. This year he's got a 1 centimeter tumor. But that'll be effectively removed in an outpatient procedure, and you won't have any residual from that, right? Rather than waiting for it to spread and finding out when you're coughing up blood, and by that time it's too late, right? So we try to reassure people that we're here to not just tell you the bad problems, but to give you a path forward so that you can help reverse this disease process, catch your cancers. If it is a cancer, catch it early, and then treat it. And we have entire networks of physicians we work through, so that you're not getting unnecessary surgery, that we're sending you to qualified people, and then at the same time, giving you the information to make the decisions.
And I think, Kim, you raise an important point. If there are a lot of these scanning companies now that will give you a diagnostic, but there's no follow-up. And I think what you're doing at Fountain Life is really different. You don't just dump the data in someone's lap. You're there for the care component and the care navigation piece.
That's correct. And that's exactly right. And I think one of the challenges we've had with the traditional medical system is that, first of all, they don't really understand the technology. So people tend to be down on what they're not up on. Yeah. And so that's not...
That's a great saying. I like that.
Really
down
is
on what they're not up on.
And so it's really common in medicine. I laugh about, we joke about it a lot, but, I give this talk quite frequently in front of people, and invariably there's a physician in the room. And if the physician's not really up to speed on things, I've had comments like, I don't know why you're doing whole body MRIs. You're just going to find things. Right. We've had people look at our advanced AI. By the way, these are FDA approved. Okay. So none of this is, experimental, except we do offer some FDA trials for some things we can talk about. But the point is, all of the scanning technology has FDA approval. And so the most recent one we have is about 2.5 years old, FDA approval. Cardiologists still struggle with it because it actually shows you how much plaque you have in your arteries. And now that means the cardiologist has to show you how to reverse that plaque.
So this is a diagnostic that you have that might not be in the average cardiologist's office.
Definitely is not in the average cardiologist's office.
But I also read, Bill, where you guys are really embracing the power of AI to do some of these tests. But you envision a time where people can push a button or remotely get these tests done. But, a lot of people are really scared of AI, right? We're not scared here because we're having the summit translated to 30 languages at once by AI. But, there's a lot of scariness about AI. But for this in particular, where is the human touch in the getting the scans, as Alexia said, and, remotely doing things and then going, what does this mean?
Right. So we believe that there's always should be a human in the loop. That's just the reality. And AI is great, but and we use it a lot, and it's going to get a lot better. But what people have to remember, these are still just advanced statistical algorithms running at a pace that most people are just not used to seeing. And so it's important to know that we use AI because the amount of data we're analyzing is so immense that the human brain can't comprehend all the potential opportunities to look and detect early disease and treat it, right? So we use it, and we're very bullish on it. But also, I think it's really important to understand that, at the core, we're still, it's a people business, and we take care of our clients. And, we're not just giving you the data into the abyss, because a lot of our clients will come through, get the testing done, they get their whole report, and then they quickly run to their family doctor. And we're happy to talk to the family doctor about it. But only 10% of the family doctors even get it.
I cannot tell you how much I agree with that.
And they don't understand it. And so what we find is that if they are data-centric, they appreciate it. If they are not data-centric, they might wind up in the wastebasket, because the patients come to them with all this information. And, unfortunately for primary care doctors today, they're in an untenable situation. They're asked to see 40, 50 patients a day. You got 10 minutes. I mean, most family doctors tell you, okay, well, you have one problem today. What one problem do you want to talk about?
Right.
And they usually treat the computer better than they do you, right? So they're 7 minutes on the computer, 3 actually talking to you, or maybe 10 on the computer and talking while they're typing. The problem is, we are not giving our physicians the right tools to do the job.
But Bill, I had a blood test last week, and it goes in my chart. I could show it to you. And they were like, there's a few things there, don't worry about them, you're fine. No, there's a lot in here. You didn't tell me anything. Very upsetting. Go ahead, Alexia.
So I guess a couple of things to double click into. So one, for your friend there was a finding of the nodule in the lung, what would be the next step in the Fountain Life ecosystem?
So we have a network of people we refer to, competent pulmonologists. In that case, he would probably get a biopsy done. And then if it turns out that it's oncogenic, well, he got a PET scan next, and then we wound up getting a biopsy. I haven't seen the biopsy results. And then after that, he'd go on we'd send him to a cancer center like Moffitt for possible, lobe resection. Yep. I think today in the summit, we'll be talking to, we'll be showing a video, and actually people are here, for one of our client members that came through, and we caught, stage 1 kidney cancer. And so he successfully had surgery. He's 53 years old, totally asymptomatic, and had kidney cancer, had his kidney removed. And the doc said he was probably, a few weeks away from it becoming metastatic and going to his lymph nodes.
Right.
So the point is, you want to know early, because the problem is otherwise, you can imagine in his case, it's a kidney resection. Yes, the surgery is not great, all of that. And he will have to live with, that for the rest of his life, but he has another one, okay? But more importantly, he doesn't have to have chemo.
Right.
Doesn't have to have radiation.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to have that because it didn't spread.
Yeah. And there are also, so you're obviously finding these things out early, which is amazing. And then also for just healthy patients, you can help them just optimize, right?
Absolutely.
So it's not like, don't scare people that we're going to go to Fountain Life and discover, I'm sure for the vast majority of your patients, they're finding out that they're healthy, but their blood work could be improved in different ways. And so I would love to talk a little bit about just also the dashboard that you have, because I think one of the frustrations that so many people have in healthcare is, yes, you have Epic, and yes, it's gotten better with merging your healthcare records, but it's still user-friendly. You still can't integrate data from your wearables. There's still no, in money management, we all take for granted, right? We have great tools to see, where our money is and stuff, and it all consolidates beautifully. And in healthcare, it's a disparate mess, right? So what are you doing there?
So we have a very robust data system that can ingest any data that we want.
Yeah.
Okay, meaning we can ingest your entire genome, which is 3.2 billion base pairs, into the cloud. We can ingest any MRI that you have, any CCTA, anything that has an API, including all your wearable data and your medical record data from Epic or Cerner or Meditech. So now you have your own longevity data locker, if you will, where all your data is secure. And our system has got the ultimate security. We're probably going to create some sort of encryption around it with blockchain. We think that there's an opportunity for you to own your data. We actually think you should own your own data. First of all, you paid for it. All the testing you've been paying for, or somebody's been paying on your behalf. Yeah. But the reality is, it's your data. You should have it accessible. But what we're excited about as we starting into this new data phase is bringing in large language models to where you can now verbally query your data.
You can query your data.
So asking about your risk factors, or asking what was my ApoB, or what, like
anything, right? So all your lab data will be in there. We can then show you on an app all of your lab data. We can give you longitudinal, we'll show you some graphs and stuff. But then being able to bring your sleep patterns in from your Aura ring or your 8 sleep bed, along with your lab biomarkers to see trends over time, right? And then we want you to be able to start looking at, if you wanted to say, hey, show me my hemoglobin A1C over the last 3 months and show me my sleep scores over the last 3 months to see what this starts to look like. But what we're really getting to is a point and where we're working right now, and hopefully we'll have a beta out in the next 6 months, is being able to visually show you your digital twin.
Oh my God.
So for the first time, you could actually look at your health and you in a snapshot. Because what's important to remember, the iPhone is 15 years old, okay? It has become a personalized service where you personalize it with every app that you want. And it becomes custom to you.
Yep.
But in medicine, we treat everybody the same with population health. Meaning that if you are a white male, age 50, you get this blood pressure medicine, regardless of your genetics. And we know that there are over 500 genes that the FDA says you should be tested for, 500 medications you should be tested for genetically before you're being put on them. Most people don't know that. So when we do your genome and we do your whole genome sequencing, we're looking at all your pharmacogenomics to see what you can metabolize and can't metabolize. So some people can't take let's say they don't metabolize an antidepressant, or they don't metabolize, an anxiety medicine, or they metabolize really fast. Well, you would like to know that before you actually take the pill, because you might need a bigger dose versus a smaller dose. The problem is we've genericized healthcare out of a scarcity mentality. And the reason we have a scarcity mentality is because we're waiting too late to diagnose things, and they're so much more expensive when we get to them. So if we start to catch things early and we lower the cost of healthcare, that means that everybody gets access to the best care when they need it if it becomes a late-stage problem. Versus today, we're going to wind up rationing care because we can't afford what we currently put in place.
Let me just, because before we run out of time, one thing people should know is you don't just have a center or centers, but you actively partner with other brands. One was a sponsor of this podcast, Magleby Development in Park City, that you want to give homeowners. Same with, what is the name of the high-rise in Miami?
That'll be Mobius.
Mobius, where each homeowner will have an individual profile taken, and then an individualized program will be designed. One thing that struck me is, before I came to this summit, I spent 2 days, day and a half at the Carillon Miami Wellness Resort, famous for its touchless therapies as well as a huge spa. So I did red light therapy. I had my body defragged on an EMF machine. I did a meditation dome, some kind of sonic facial. I slept in a bright bed, but the bed was the only thing that gave me data back to tell me. And I forgot to turn it back on when I woke up in the middle of the night and went back to sleep, so I only had 3.5 hours data. But you say that you're going to offer your patients a way to measure the baseline to determine if these sorts of things are really helping you.
Correct. I mean, one of the challenges, and the reason we're at Global Wellness is because they've been the leader in establishing what I would call an alternative path for healthcare. Because it's not, it starts in its infancy, but the understanding that doctors and in the healthcare professionals today are not trained to keep you healthy. That starts at the baseline. And understand it's not taught in medical school. Medical schools today, only 1/3 of medical schools have a class in nutrition, and most of the time it's an elective. It's not elected for, okay?
Right.
And I would argue even it's not very good nutritionally. But more importantly, what we want to get to is we believe that the doctor's office, particularly when it comes to primary care, will dematerialize into the 4 walls of your home within the next 10 years. Meaning that the technology for you to access healthcare will be on a constant basis, and your 4 walls of your home will be essentially any access point where we start to measure your biometrics in a passive way. And that's what we'll be doing with Valvair and we'll be doing with Mobius, so that you're not thinking about your healthcare, but your healthcare is being monitored. And by the way, it's your private data cloud, so it's not being shared. We don't sell data. I just want to make that very clear. Our company's never been we don't play that game. It's your data, and you can choose to share it or not share it. But more importantly, have an AI that can give you recommendations. So if you're standing there brushing your teeth in the morning, the floor underneath you is doing your weight, your body, calculations, all of your measuring your body composition, all of that to impedance. Things that you just normally passively in your environment, we're collecting data. And we can collect a lot of data now. But more importantly, it feeds into your medical record and it feeds into everything else. Our reason for this is, as we move into the home, we believe that that's how we're going to, number one, lower the cost of healthcare. And 95% of healthcare really happens outside the doctor's office.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't have a way to measure any of it. And what we like about the Global Wellness Institute, not only being able to blend with all of these wellness initiatives that have, we know people feel better when they're doing it. The question is, how do you measure it?
Yeah.
Because if we can't measure it, we really can't manage it. And you want to know where you are on the spectrum. So what I would tell people is, what we're going to be doing with Mobius, and we're excited about, is that not only will we come in and do the evaluation and set your baseline, but then from that baseline, be able to kind of recommend maybe the interventions you might want in your home.
The ones you particularly
You might want red light therapy. You might rather have a plunge pool. And, some of this is what you're willing to tolerate and not tolerate. But I think that all of this winds up being modalities. And in our estimation, so what we know about red light therapy, it really is good for mitochondrial health, and that's really where its main function is. All of the others, saunas and plunge pools, it all goes with stretching your body, okay? Your body is not meant to be in a comfort state. And it turns out that the sirtuins and all of the longevity genes get activated when it's under stress. Now, not too much stress, but just enough. And so, how do you
fitness,
measure that?
Sauna, all of the things.
All of that. You're designed not to be in a comfortable state.
Yeah.
Well, I should be doing well.
But I think it's important. But the reason we're doing this is because as we move into the home settings, so we don't believe healthcare, once again, is going to change by itself. Yep. But we believe when people are empowered and when they can take control of their health, and then we can start to build a large movement that says, we don't want the other system. We want a system that keeps us healthy. And we don't want old technology to keep us healthy. When we talked about hormones earlier, we don't want somebody giving us old advice and old information. And so, unfortunately, with the medical schools today, they're about 20 years behind where the science is.
And so, I mean, it's amazing what you guys are doing. Like, it's just, from the technology to the care piece, like it's all incredible. Are you also, can you serve as someone's primary care too, where they can come and so if it's not, we talked a lot about finding tumors and things like that are more acute, but in terms of just optimizing metabolic health, optimizing hormonal health.
Yes.
Do you do all that as well?
Yes, we do all of that. Okay. Yeah. So your baseline is to make sure we find out exactly what your baseline is. And then we move you into, you can be in one of our advanced programs at one of our destination centers, which helps as we move into the home setting. It turns out that the physician or the health team, it's actually the least expensive part of the healthcare equation, okay? Yeah. And it turns out also what we're doing with Mobius and our other communities as we embed Fountain Life in there is that you actually pay for this, and this is paid for through your homeowner's fees.
Yeah. So let's talk about what it costs, okay? Because we'll talk about, people I'm sure are listening and they want to know how much this costs. And there are a variety of levels. So maybe talk to us about the most robust membership and then how things are evolving with insurance and HOAs.
Yeah, so I would say the most robust thing we have is our Edge program. And that's an $85,000 a year program, but that's for people who want everything.
And who have everything.
And it is actually, but we're very grateful to our members because what they do is help us collect data at scale that we can then, I use the Tesla example very often, but Elon knew he had to build a $100,000 car before he could build a $30,000 car.
Right. Yeah.
And so our goal is to collect the massive amount of data because we think we have one of the largest asymptomatic databases out there.
But at the same time, not to be devil's advocate, but the person that could afford that has taken pristine care of themselves, you would think.
That's actually not true.
Yeah, I was going to say, look at Elon Musk. No. I mean, that guy is not a paragon of wellness.
The people I know that could afford it are always asking how they
they don't. You'd be surprised. I mean, and so in that program, we actually have some people that have chronic diseases like Crohn's that don't want to do medications, and we can find ways with functional medicine to get them off of their medications. That's not the only program, but that's also for people who want the cutting edge. So we do advanced, we do therapeutic plasma exchange in that program. We do an FDA trial using placental blood sera. We're doing an FDA trial with placental stem cells. There are things that we can do under FDA trial, and that's what that program is for. So it's a very small group of people. It's 100, 150 people that do that.
Okay.
And that's kind of the people pushing the edge, okay? Our base program for most people is our Apex program, and that's about a $19,000, $500 program. And that includes all of your testing that we talked about, and an entire care team that follows you. One doctor for every 250 members in that program. There's a nurse in that in your care team, maybe a doctor, a nurse, and a health coach, and a medical coordinator. Okay. And they will coordinate all of your care, ongoing blood testing, ongoing follow-ups, messaging, all of the things you want to do for primary care is done through that. And so that's what that base program is. And then we have our snapshot program. We call it SNAP, and it's like $11,000. If you just want to come in and see and have all the testing done, baseline diagnostics, and get a snapshot, you can do that. Where we'll be launching Q1 of next year around our centers and in limited geographies with some country clubs as a beta is our digital program, which is ultimately where we're going. Because what this digital program is, it'll be about $3,000 a year. And it will allow you to do most of the functional medicine testing, have a physician, a health coach, do a lot of the things we're already talking about. But more importantly, then you can, you're with you and your care team, you can decide, do you want to get a CCTA? Do you want a whole body MRI? And you can go to a Fountain Center and get that via a la carte. That ultimately, it's that digital program that becomes the base of what we're doing in the home setting.
And that's blood work and labs.
Blood work, labs. And then we do hormonal optimization, nutraceuticals. But our nutraceuticals, so first of all, we're a platform company. And so we don't have our own products. We look for the best products. And then, but if you have a different product you want to use, different nutraceutical, we certainly will discuss that with you. We just want to make sure you get the best one. But it's all based on your metabolism. We look at vitamin levels in your blood, all of the things you need to. We look at things that might be conflicting with your vitamin levels. And it's very important that we restore the health of your microbiome because that's critical to
We all need to hug our microbiome. Well, I wanted to ask before we close, last night, the gentleman that's building the high-rise in Miami had been to a Tony Robbins event. And he also said that one of his major drivers in life is giving back, feeding people. All right, there's a lot of people that could never afford $85,000. They can't afford $3,000. How are you going to trickle down? What tips could you give to just Joe Average listening to this podcast?
Yeah, so we will have, certainly you can go on the Fountain Life website. There's a lot of information there, okay? And we can give you lots of passive information you can get on our newsletter. There's lots of things you can do, news tips. We are looking at the possibility of, offering a freemium. By the way, the app incorporates your wearables and things of this nature. I tell people all the time, if you really want longevity and people are just trying to figure out what's the best thing to do, I think two things you can do definitively is number one, sleep. And get adequate sleep. There's a really good book called Why We Sleep. Okay, it's a fantastic book.
Why We Sleep?
And it was written by a Stanford physician. Definitely worth to read. Okay, and there's things you can do for sleep hygiene. Cool room, cooling pad. There's lots of things that can make a huge difference in that. And then second thing, get your muscle mass up.
Yep.
Because muscle mass is absolutely critical. It's the most important thing you can do for longevity. As we move forward, what our goal is as we democratize is to actually start to leverage the dollars that are currently being spent in other areas, but maybe not being spent the way we would spend them. So what do I mean by that? We have a Fountain Health Benefits company where we're targeting self-insured employers, where we do a lot of this testing on the front end using insurance premium dollars. So a lot of our wealthy members who own a company, they want this for their members or for their employees. And so that's one avenue that we can do this. The second thing we're doing is as we kind of move forward is really starting and embedding in communities where dollars around homeowners fees will actually pay for most of your screening. So that way it's not an extra, because look, let's face it. The biggest check most people write every month is for rent. Second largest check is usually for health insurance.
Right.
And that people don't want to write yet a third check. Okay. So we're trying to find ways to better leverage the dollars that are currently being spent or misspent inside the health system. But more importantly, I think as we move into these areas, what we find is that people just don't know what to do. And so if we can find a way to do better information and access to these types of technologies, and then people can kind of figure out what they need. And by the way, not everybody needs everything at the same stage of life.
Right.
So if you're 25 years old, you might just want to get a whole body MRI and find your baseline and get your blood baseline and find out where you are, because you would like to know at 25, because when you're 75, we would like to put you back there.
Right. And I think, as you alluded to earlier, the cost of all of this will just continue to come down dramatically.
No doubt.
Over the next 5 to 10 years. So while it's definitely sticker shock now, the price will come down. And I think, even right now, I know you can go and get a DEXA scan for $100 and $150. Just Google DEXA scan near me. Lots of locations will come up. You can see your lean muscle mass that way. So, you don't have to take the whole Fountain Life journey if you're not ready. And then also you can ask your doctor to run bloods. You can look on the Fountain Life website, see the blood panels that they run, and then ask your doctor that's covered by insurance to run those labs for you. In most cases, they will. That's a hack that I've certainly used,
No doubt.
is to look at that more advanced screening that you would offer and then just ask your own primary care doc to run those labs.
Well, listen, I want to thank you both. This has just been so fascinating. I mean, I am so inspired when people learn, the light goes on, and they say, I can change the trajectory of my life. I mean, it's so
feel
powerful.
Empowered by, yeah.
So thank you, Alexia, and thank you, Bill. Remember, everybody, it's fountainlife.com. We make 100 the new 60. The potential, the possibilities, we're living in a grand time, aren't we?
It's the best time to be alive.
And maybe just a quick plug for Tony Robbins' book that really started this and talks about what this is. Maybe you can just share the title.
Yeah, so the book is called Life Force.
Yeah.
It was published about 18 months ago, quickly made the New York Times bestseller. Tony did something very similar when he did Money Masters of the Universe, and he tried to democratize access to some of the best advice about financial matters, and it became a bestseller. All the proceeds for this Tony gives away. It's not a passion project. I should say it's a pure passion project. But what Tony wanted to do, he accessed 150 of the top researchers in the world about the latest healthcare innovations that are out there today that you probably aren't going to hear from your physician. And the reason behind that has to do with the clinical latency gap and the fact that most doctors today, when FDA approves the technology, it's about 17 years till most physicians use it widely in their practice.
Oh my God.
It's just really slow in adoption. But we believe you should be CEO of your own health, empowerment. A book like Life Force will give you the background on all the technology that's out there today. And we did not talk really a lot about longevity. There are amazing new technologies that are coming down the road to extend the healthy lifespan. Our mission at Fountain is we do incorporate those, but the first step in all of that is don't dive anything stupid.
Don't
dive anything stupid. I mean, I just want to thank you so much because what you're doing is not easy. This is really hard work. And this is revolutionary. This will change healthcare. And I think, maybe people are hearing about it for the first time on this podcast, but Fountain Life will become a household name. And you heard about it first on the Global Wellness Summit podcast.
Well, we're fortunate. We're backed by a really great team. I have an amazing group of professionals, and I get to go and do the fun part, and they make the rest of it work.
Well, sorry for all the bowling that was going on above our heads, but meanwhile, I love the name of your company. Oh my gosh. So to be continued, all right?
Very good. Thank you.